Welcome to Around the Girdle Earth, the podcast where Dartmouth stories come to life. I'm your host, Giovanni Jerez, class of '03, and on each episode, we sit down with members of the Dartmouth alumni community to explore the moments, the mentors, and the memories that shaped them, from the green to the great unknown. So whether you graduated last year or decades ago, the conversations offer a window into the journeys we have taken and the common threads that connect us all. Today, we have a very special guest, a recent graduate. In fact, she graduated last year in 2024, Daniela Garrod. Daniela, welcome to the podcast. And typically, we start off by getting a little sense of your cultural background, anything prior to Dartmouth. So why don't you kick us off and start us there, Daniela?
Yeah, Giovanni, thank you so much for having me. I have been watching some of the videos you have posted so far, and they're all wonderful. So it's great to be part of this. Yeah, so I was born and raised in Cuba, and I moved to Miami with my mom and my stepdad when I was 14. So I did most of my schooling in Vedado, in Havana. And then I basically joined the US education system in high school. And then I was part of the ESO program when I was in high school, which is the English as a Second Language program. That's how I learned English, because I had to learn from scratch, and so did my parents. And then after that, in high school, I joined the International Baccalaureate Program. And that's how very similar to what we were talking about, that's how I got introduced to the Ivy League and how to get a bachelor's, the SAT. Yeah.
But Daniela, I know behind every Cuban American story, there is a journey. So you were in Cuba, and then how did you and your parents make it to the US?
Yeah, so my biological father is actually a political prisoner in Cuba. And so we came into the US through a myriad of refugee programs that they have set up. And so my mom was contacted first, and then my stepdad was around. And so we all came together. We were lucky enough to come together as a family. We came in through a refugee program.
And so Miami was the first stop in the US?
Miami was the first stop. Yeah. And it was, in some ways it was really a blessing, because it still felt like home. There's a lot of Cubans in Miami, lots of great Cuban food. And so in many ways we felt right in. I think there was still the aspect of my parents were navigating, trying to enter the workforce, which is always hard when you don't speak English. Me entering high school, navigating that, so it still was a cultural shock for sure, but definitely Miami helped.
Well, the good news about Miami is that it's one of the few places where I know you could get away without not knowing English, right?
Yeah.
Because most people speak Spanish there, so you can get away with that. So I'm actually surprised that you picked up English fairly quickly in Miami. What was your mentality as a recent, as an immigrant landing in the foreign country in Miami? Were you like a go-getter? Were you like, I gotta really focus on this? Like, tell us about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was kind of in the eat the world mentality, basically proof that I deserve to be here, proof that I deserve the opportunities that were gonna come my way. And that was especially a mentality when I got to Dartmouth, for sure. So there was a lot of pushing myself. Like, I remember I would only speak English with my surrounding friends, no matter how well they spoke Spanish. I really tried my best to have my broken English. I think it was also a household thing. Like, my parents and I worked really hard together to make sure that we were catching up with the English part of things and the cultural part of things. So it was definitely a very open conversation with my parents, which helped a lot.
Wow. So you were very intentional. You were
Yes.
experiencing that hunger of like, I got to move forward and reach for the stars. I mean, the land of opportunity.
Yeah. American dream.
Yeah. How did you learn about Dartmouth? How did it came into your purview? And then, like, what made you decide? And was that Dartmouth your only choice? Like, did you visit before that? Give us context on that.
Yeah, it's all very funny. All a very funny story. So as I was mentioning before, when I joined the International Baccalaureate program in my high school, that's really what opened my eyes. And that's when I first started learning about the Ivy League, and obviously Dartmouth is part of the Ivy League. So I had heard the name already. You know, one of my classmates had mentioned it, how it is a quaint liberal arts college. And then surprisingly enough, my mom's favorite movie at the time was The Love Story. I don't know if you've watched it. It's a 1970s film. And there is a scene in which Harvard is playing against Dartmouth. And at the time, in like a hockey game or something, and at the time, I remember thinking, oh my God, my classmate just told me about Dartmouth yesterday. Today, my mom mentioned that there was Dartmouth in the hockey scene. It feels like, Dartmouth. It became like kind of a buzzword for me. And so I started researching a bit more about it. I learned a lot about the scientific opportunities that are there. They have a lot of programs for minorities in STEM, which was really important to me, a lot of programs for women in STEM. So I kind of fell in love with that. And just like the cute liberal arts of it all, it did seem like a really pretty campus, a very tight community. And truly what solidified me choosing Dartmouth. So for a really long time, I was in between Bartner because I had gotten a scholarship there to do science throughout my 4 years, which was really nice. But what really solidified Dartmouth for me was Lincoln Vidal, which you interviewed. He was my interviewer, actually, to get into Dartmouth. And he spoke so highly of the people there and the education. And he's Cuban also, who had recently moved from Cuba when he was like 13, 12 or so. And so I felt like if someone who had experienced what I had experienced felt like this was home to them, it must feel incredible. And so that truly sealed it for me. And I didn't get to tour Dartmouth before because in my last year of high school, it was COVID, so I didn't tour anything. My freshman year of college was also COVID, so I made the decision to not go to Dartmouth until my sophomore year. And so my sophomore year was my first time on campus. And that was, many things could have gone wrong. And maybe I wouldn't have liked the campus. Maybe I wouldn't have liked being enrolled in New Hampshire. But when I first walked in, and I walked in with my parents, I basically, I won't ever forget, I like patted my back that day because I was like, wow, you made a decision and now you're here and you feel safe and it was autumn at the time. So the air felt crispy, the leaves were turning. I was like, wow, this is the best. This is perfect. And I remember being very relieved that Dartmouth, at least from the outside at that point, was exactly what I had imagined it to be.
So in other words, your expectations met reality.
For sure.
Right? Yeah. And you walked into campus, and autumn is a good time to walk into campus.
Yeah.
If you would have walked in winter, maybe you would have been like, now.
The other way.
How was those winters for you coming from Cuba?
Yeah, honestly, the first winter was almost like magical to me. That was the first time I had seen snow. It's like a little kid's dream. And then there's the Dr. Seuss snowball fight of it all. I felt like I was living like a classical American movie for a bit. That was the first winter. The second winter, I was like, wow, this is really cold. We had a really tough. I remember getting like even more parkas than I could have ever imagined, gloves, beanies. Oh my God, I was decked out basically. So by the second winter, I was already like, okay, bracing for impact. But it still never lost its charm to me, the winter, especially the winters at Dartmouth, because the way the snow falls on the buildings, I think it's like a postcard. And so even though it was definitely tough, I kind of continue falling in love with it every winter.
Yeah. No, I think I could echo the sentiments as well. Right. There is something beautiful about the snow, but then the first time, and then once you see the consistency of it, you're like, okay, when is this thing going to stop?
Yeah.
It's like, but at the same time, you're like, yeah, but it's kind of beautiful. I kind of want to deal with it. It's like, but thank God it's only for a few months. And then,
exactly.
we go to sprint, What did you do as an undergrad? What were your major? Did you do any sports, any extracurricular activities?
Yeah, I guess I dabbled a bit of everything. So I was a neuroscience major and a mathematics minor. So I spent a good amount of my time in the research field. So I was an EHS scholar, which is a program for minorities in STEM, like I have mentioned before. I was in Women in Science project, which I was first a trainee, but then I became a mentor. I was a URAD scholar. So I did a lot of research on campus for sure. And then I did fencing my sophomore years
Yes,
for winter.
I did fencing too.
Really?
Amazing.
Amazing. It's one of those sports that are so classic, and I feel like I needed to try it, and I did. And because of timing and stuff, it didn't ended up working out super big, but I loved it. I'm proud to say that I did fencing to this day. Did a lot of hiking. I did the Gaio mountain hike a couple of times. Yeah, what else was I involved in? I took a lot of, even though my majors were very STEM heavy, I took a lot of Spanish and Latin American film classes. So I wrote Spanish poetry. I analyzed films as a hobby. I used to go to the Hop a lot, go to a lot of the Hop events, especially because most of them were student run, and it was nice to see what my friends were up to. They were always up to great things. So yeah, that was kind of my life at Dartmouth. Yeah.
Wow, it sounds very much like you diversified your experience. You packed into 3 years basically,
Yeah.
right? Because your freshman year you were out. This very diverse experience, the Dartmouth Outing Club, the Hop. I mean, it's just funky just to hear you saying. I could empathize with a lot of that. Did you have a favorite place in campus to study? Did you have a favorite professor? Like any favorite memories that come to mind?
In terms of favorite places to study, I loved Kemeny. So Kemeny, on the second floor, there's this big study region with nice windows so you can see the outside, you can get sunlight. I love studying there. I would log in and study there for hours and do my projects there. So that was an incredible place and campus. And
wait, Kemeny, is that the math building?
Yeah, Kemeny, the math building on the second floor.
The ugly looking math building?
It's not ugly. I don't think it's that ugly. No, so now I'm not sure if you have been there recently, but on the second floor, there is like a study hall. And in the study hall, it's like a bunch of really nice tables, all with chargers, very conveniently placed. And it's a huge window. It's a semicircle of window essentially, and you can get a lot of sunlight in there, and you can see the outside, you can see the tower. So yeah,
right. Because the view, next time I visit, I'll look for that. Okay,
catch it. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I loved it. I think it was a really nice space.
So how many all-nighters did you end up pulling through your Dartmouth career?
Surprisingly, none. So I value sleep a lot. I am the kind of mentality that if it doesn't get done by a certain time, it's not gonna get done. So until I am saying this, but that was true until I was writing my neuroscience honors thesis. That was the first. I only pulled one, and that was the one and only all-nighter I've ever pulled. That was difficult because I was applying to grad school at the time, finishing the thesis, I had a 4-class term. That was intense.
What?
But yeah, that was really intense. I did that to myself. I'm gonna say it.
For those who don't know, typically every term you take 3 classes. And I made the mistake one time of taking 4 classes. And ironically enough, that was actually my best term because I feel like I had no time for anything else. So I had to everything had to be on lockdown. Right. Maybe that was your experience was similar to that.
Yeah, I mean, that term, that was senior fall. Senior fall was definitely very difficult for me, but it made me, I guess, in a similar way, feel the most productive I've ever felt. I advanced my research a lot during that time. I was applying to grad school, which was a major step for me. So yeah, I guess it's it felt the most productive I have been in a while, for sure.
I'm curious, how did you land in neuroscience?
Yeah, so it was definitely a journey. So I first applied to Dartmouth as a physics math major. I was in love with physics. I love dynamical and electrical systems. That's kind of what the kind of research I did during high school, and that's the research I kind of kept wanting to continue doing. And because of the Dartmouth distributed aspect of it all, I ended up taking Introduction to Neuroscience my freshman spring. Yes, my freshman spring. And I learned, and that was the time that I learned that there is no system more dynamical and more electrical than neurons and the brain, truly. It sounds cliche, but it was true. It was fascinating. It was the most complex system I had gotten my hands on. And so from that moment, I fell in love with the electrophysiology side of neuroscience, the receptors, how neurons communicate electrically with one another, how that electrical system can change into emotions, to behavior, to all the crazy things we do with our brains. And so that's kind of how I transitioned from physics to neuroscience while keeping the math to understand, a bit more what is happening in the brain and model it, basically.
So then you just, that sparked a curiosity on you and you decided to pursue it. Yeah. And then how did you know, I mean, most people don't go right into grad school after they graduate. How did you know that was going to be your transition? And maybe then also tell us, why Brown?
Yeah, so I did a lot of research during my undergrad. Basically, during my freshman year, I was in Women in Science project, and I got a scholarship to be a computational neuroscience trainee. So I did a lot of computational neuroscience my freshman and my sophomore year. And then from then I was like, no, I actually want to get my hands on. I want to work with animal models, and I want to perturb the systems that I'm studying and see how that's affecting behavior. So then I joined a wet lab at Dartmouth with Dr. Kyle Smith. And then that was really what inspired me to go to grad school, because I was working really closely with a grad student then. It was basically me and her doing all the experiments, designing them. And so I realized that this is something I can see myself doing for many, many, many years. Having my own questions, designing ways to answer them, and answering them. I think that felt so fascinating to me. I felt so in control. So I decided that that's definitely what I wanted to do. And grad school, joining a PhD program right out of undergrad was definitely the easiest way to tackle it. Yeah. So, and the reason why I chose Brown, it was less about Brown and more about the NIH. So a bit about my program. The Brown NIH program is a PhD that I'm in. So I do a year at Brown. I take my classes there. I rotate there for a bit. And then the rest of my research, I actually do it at the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health. And the caliber of research in that institute, I mean, it is the top institute in the country for a reason, but it's just incredible, really. The amount of resources that you have at the palm of your hands, the mentorship, the community, because it's all about the institutes. And once you're in an institute, everyone works together to tackle the same question. And so I really wanted to be part of that community. And so that's why I chose the Brown NIH program.
Wait, so I guess I missed it in what you were saying. So is the NIH very close to the Brown campus? Is that what it is?
No, not at all. So it's basically a partnership.
Okay.
And so students that, yeah, I mean, it's discontinued now because of all the NIH shenanigans that have been going on. But yeah, basically it is a program. It's an affiliated program. So they allow you to take those classes at Brown, and then you continue your research at the NIH.
Yeah. Gotcha. So is this PhD program at like your standard 5-year program, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So have you picked your, I would have, okay, so let me ask it this way. If you had to do a TED Talk, right, based on your passion or whatever, would it align with what you're doing your PhD on? What would that subject be?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think I hope in one stage of my career I'm capable of doing a tech talk. But so right now I study the cellular and circuit mechanisms behind psychiatric disorders like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. And so my main question comes to the receptors. So again, I was fascinated by the electrical, physiological aspect of neurons themselves. So receptors are the way in which neurons communicate with one another. So for me, asking what is going wrong with those receptors in which subpopulations of neurons, in which parts of the brain, that eventually could help us understand a bit more what is happening in the brains of clinical populations that suffer from these psychiatric disorders. I think that will be what my tech talk is about. And my research in particular, I focus on dopamine receptors and opioid receptors. So thinking about how they communicate with one another, how a neuron might have both, and how it differentially interacts with them depending on the circumstance, like reward or threat. Those kinds of questions. I would definitely, I could go on and on about those. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, less than 7% of Latinos hold a PhD. So you're going to be joining that very exclusive group of Latinos pursuing higher education. I think I was never attracted to a PhD. I just never was like, what will be the subject that I want to, become an expert on. But everything that you mentioned did trigger me, this concept of addiction to social media, right? Like the neurons and you were talking. That's the image that came to mind, and that's very, very real, very dangerous.
Absolutely,
even I as an adult, right?
Yep. During my time at Dartmouth, I actually did a lot of addiction studies. So yeah, addiction is something that is very prevalent. It only affects a certain amount of people. So all sorts of people can try drugs, and only a subpopulation of them get addicted to them. So the question is like, what is happening in the brain that makes them susceptible, how it can be treated, how it can be diagnosed. Yeah, what are vulnerability models? Those are definitely questions I want to tackle in as well.
Wow, I did not know that. I didn't know that only a subset of individuals develop the addiction.
Yeah, the addiction part of it all, like in a neurological way, in a psychiatric way. Yeah, only a subpopulation.
Gotcha. Obviously, I've been to Brown. I did my master's at Brown. It's a very quaint campus as well. Providence is very beautiful, but it offers a little different dynamic.
Absolutely.
Compared to Dartmouth, right? Providence, Brown, Hanover, Dartmouth. It's a little bit of different dynamic. What are your impressions?
Yeah, it was very interesting because even though I joined Brown as a grad student, I still had to interact a lot with undergrads. Of course, I was TAing and mentoring and stuff. And what I realized is that this sort of bubble that the Dartmouth students are in all the time, this idea that we're all in this community together in one center space. We all live the same traditions. We all know each other, or a mutual. They don't have that at Brown, and I was so surprised. I think that was one of my biggest surprise post-grads, is realizing that some of these also quaint colleges don't have that. And I think that makes Dartmouth so much more special in my eyes, for sure.
So what traditions were you thinking about when you were reflecting on that answer?
Yeah, I think, for example, the snowball fight of it all, and the cultish ones, that what we like to call them a cult, right? The bonfire, the ceremony that we do at the beginning with the candles, like all of those stuff are they're great Dartmouth traditions, and we value them and we reflect on them even many years after we graduate. And Brown, so far from what I saw, didn't have any of that, or the student body was not as involved in them as the Dartmouth was. So that was nice.
Without revealing too many details, did you do anything in frat row? How was that? How was your interaction and your experience with that underground culture of Dartmouth?
Yeah, for sure. I was actually not affiliated at a sorority. I did join a secret society my senior year, and that obviously made frat row even much more palpable. But during my first obviously during my freshman year, didn't do anything. But during my sophomore year especially, I had the mentality of like, I need to grind, 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 grind. I don't have time for anything other than doing my research and working and pushing forward. So that's why the idea initially of being affiliated was not attracted to me at all. But the great thing about Dartmouth, and I think it's truly great because it's not the same in other universities, is that front row is very open. You know, even though I wasn't affiliated, I went to everything just the same. And some of my friends were, and I would join them in their formals, and I partook in all the darties. So I think, what I do definitely appreciate about front row is that it was never super, it was always inclusive, at least. So that was nice.
So you did learn how to play Pong, and you did.
I did, of course.
Okay,
of course.
all right.
I still play Pong to this day. I think whenever there is like a college or like a friend's party and they're playing Pong, I'm like, guys, you're not playing in the way you're supposed to. This is not it. So it's always my job, to provide knowledge of the culture.
To teach them how to do it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Yeah.
That's hilarious. So we're wrapping up here at the end of this dialogue. I know you just graduated last year. You're still in your journey.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot. This video might be seen by up and coming high school students, maybe folks still considering Dartmouth. What will you say to them? What golden nuggets, of wisdom would you share with them?
Yeah, I think a lot for me, competition is very real, especially once you start getting into the higher and higher and higher spheres. And so I think it is important to realize that you always have to be in competition with the previous version of yourself. You always have to better yourself and compete with only older versions of yourself, never with others, because I think that minimizes so much of all the journey that has taken you to where you are today. If you compare your path as someone, for example, myself, who is a first generation college student in the US that is doing a PhD, and I compare it to someone who has been here for a while, who has had that kind of background, then I will drive myself crazy. So I think always try to better yourself and put that as a reference point, not others. I think that would be my biggest advice.
Well, that is beautifully said. I agree 100%. I'm so grateful we had that Lincoln.
I connect to you. Yes, absolutely.
I did. I think I'm going to publish this interview next week. And but yeah, he spoke very highly of you, and I was like, yes, absolutely. Let's talk to Daniela.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that we had this opportunity, and everything that you were saying brought it warmed my heart because I was able to empathize. So thank you so much, Daniela, for carving out time for us, and thank you for those who join us on this podcast of Around the Girdled Earth. If today's conversation sparked a memory or gave you something to think about, leave us a thoughtful reflection in the comment section. And please share the episode with a classmate or a fellow alum. It's a very, very easy way to keep the Dartmouth spirit alive in this digital age. So until next time, stay curious, stay green, and keep roaming the beautiful girdle earth we call home. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.